Today on Spotlight Now, we continue on in our conversation about rediscovering Hawaii's soul.
We are talking with three community leaders about their involvement in this movement and how you can get involved. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suji and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, aloha and thanks for tuning in here on this Tuesday afternoon. We are, as we said, talking about rediscovering Hawaii. So a movement that we've talked about several times on this show and really talking to community leaders who are actively involved in the process. One of those leaders joins us now, our first guest this afternoon, Kamana O'Crab. Thank you so much for being here. Let's begin just sort of talking about what rediscovering Hawaii Soul is. For those people out there who may not really know what this movement is all about and are just being introduced to it for the first time.
Sure, thank you. Rediscovering Hawaii Soul is sort of a movement that came out of a convening between business leadership from Hawaii Executive Collaborative, a number of Native Hawaiian community elders, and different stakeholders about 2 years ago. And it was really just to better understand the working relationship with the community, government, and then business community. What happened was, as a result of that convening, we came up with sort of a vision of rediscovering Hawaii Soul, meaning what is everything that is so precious about Hawaii, its people, its land, its culture, its values, and then how do we keep that sort of intact for the future generations. Recently, in the past several years, we've gone through tremendous sort of conflict, and I think the business leadership felt that we needed to do some things differently civically to try to address them and better understand these issues as we move forward. And so rediscovering Hawaii Soul is about Hawaii as a whole, as a people and as a land. And because we are a island state archipelago, there was an agreement on we have to develop this island consciousness of giving back to the land, which was really rooted in Hawaiian values, and the whole idea of reciprocity. As we build, we need to replenish. As we look at climate change and future sustainability issues, what can we do to offset sort of, the carbon footprint, and then reinvest in replenishing our upland forests, native plants, replenishing coral beds in our ocean. It's really adopting some of the real basic fundamentals of Hawaiian culture and practices. And then how do we merge that civically in our movement as a state moving forward?